people were expecting, not me. I've been predicting this for over a year. We are in double digits, even on the consumer price index, which I think underestimates the true rate of inflation. People's lived experience, if I can use that phrase, of inflation. This has been driven not just by high energy costs, which we've been talking about a lot, but also by high food prices. A lot of farmers will tell you the cost of fuel, fertiliser, animal feed, they've all been escalating, partly because of the war in Ukraine, but they've been going up for a long time anyway. And we've had 12.7% food price inflation during the year to July. And again, a lot of people will say, really? My shopping bill's a lot more than 12.7% up. So it strikes me that inflation is going to get worse before it gets better. The Bank of England, after being way off pace in terms of its forecasts for months and months, now says that inflation will peak above 13% in October. I would say I agree with that. I think the number where it peaks could be a bit higher than that. But I do think October will mark the peak because October is when that new energy price cap comes in, Tom, linked to wholesale prices, global prices for oil and gas. Household energy bills will go up, unfortunately, again from October, but then I think they'll start to come down.
So what is driving this and what can be done? Is this really just the sort of war in Ukraine, the global economy chugging back into life, or are there money supply factors here that we can control more here at home?
Well, a lot of the powers that be will tell you it's all about the war in Ukraine. It's all Putin's fault. That obviously the war in Ukraine from February, March onwards did aggravate an inflationary picture that was already seriously problematic. We were at a 30-year high for inflation in January, weeks before anyone thought that Putin would invade Ukraine. So this has been a long time coming. You mentioned post-lockdown. I think that's very, very important. A big aspect of what we got to get our head around here, Tom, is that we locked down the global economy for 2 years. It hasn't yet got back into gear. There are still all these supply chain issues, logistics issues, shortages of all kinds of things because factories were shuttered for months and months and months. You can't just turn them off and on at will, very complex systems. Demand came roaring back post-lockdown last summer. Supply couldn't respond across the world. Prices go up. And also monetary factors, which, again, you were right to mention. The Bank of England, the world's leading central banks, they've been expanding their money supply, so-called quantitative easing, also known as virtual money printing. That's been going gangbusters. I think that is feeding into inflation. Two, we've had quantitative easing for a long time. The difference is that since lockdown, those quantitative easing, that funding has been getting into broader circulation. It used to be locked up in the banking system. It's now in broader circulation. It was used to fund furlough, for instance. So it's in the bank accounts of firms and households, and that's why it's driving demand. That supply, inability of supply to respond, that is the underlying reason for inflation. It's got nothing at all to do with the war in Ukraine.